Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. My name is Leiva. I'm the Executive Director of Onboarding and Launch here at Place, and I am joined today by our good friend, Alivia Lesinski, and we are both really honored to just have some time to share and connect and collaborate around operations, leadership success, and making certain that we are achieving a positive ROI, or return on our investment, for the time that we're spending or the money that we're investing with our hired ops leverage. So with that, I'm going to just share that, we really, in terms of how we want to structure this, are going to give you a couple high-level pointers in terms of things that Alivia and I have both seen work really well as we have consulted with hundreds of teams that are a part of Place and even brokerages and some of our past experience. And I think that the key is we want you to walk away with some very specific action items or practical tips that you could immediately incorporate into your day-to-day. So I would really love to make certain that that's kind of the intention that we're setting, is that this is going to be for sure some strategic guidance here, and we'll talk at a high level around some theory, but we will also give you some practical, specific tips that you can take away into your world as we wrap up. And I think that, our goal there is also to make certain that whether you have a team of two and you're just kind of starting to build out your infrastructure and really starting to, move out of being a solo agent, or you have a team of 200, the topics, the conversation that we're going to talk through today should be applicable no matter where you're at. So this is going to be something that kind of runs the gamut of any size team, no matter where they're at in their growth trajectory. And that could be, you're working to bring on your first hire or a first virtual assistant or an executive assistant, or you've got a pretty big operational infrastructure already and you're looking to hire on additional people. So we're going to talk about those 5 things. We're going to start with a little bit of math and make certain that we feel really well-rooted, well-situated in exactly where our business is at before we start thinking about how we meaningfully incorporate ops leverage. And with that, I'm going to just kind of dive right in. I saw a hand raised. Do we want to pause and address that real quick?
I wonder if it was an accident, because I see it is not raised anymore.
Okay.
Well, Wanda, I think it was you. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat. We want to make sure that we are able to address any questions that you all have. You can put questions in there at any time and we'll be sure to answer them.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, absolutely. Let's make it a dialogue for sure. Love having you here. Okay, so I'm going to share and we are going to start talking about, can we see my screen, Olivia? Okay,
yes,
we're going to talk about leveraging operations to elevate team success. I think the first thing that I want to talk through is really kind of where do we start? And in any conversation about operational excellence, we need to start by rooting ourselves in our business, within our actual business. And where we start here is where we start always, which is what impact can this strategic decision have on my business? Now, impact can and does certainly take shape in a multitude of ways, but the most fundamental truth about scaling a business successfully is that there has to be an impact on the metrics that you're targeting, right? Those numbers, those KPIs that Olivia is going to touch on quite a bit later on. Knowing your numbers and goals is what allows you to layer in tactics, the resources, the action plans in a way that delivers results. Peter Drucker, famous management consultant, Harvard Business Review likes to quote him pretty frequently, is often mistakenly attributed to the common saying, what can be measured can be managed. And while that's not always the case, and there's some flaws in diving too deep into that way of thinking, in this specific instance, he, or apparently someone who is much less famous than him, is right. In order to maximize the return on your investment with any hired leverage, whether that be an operations coordinator, an in-house transaction coordinator, an executive assistant, a virtual assistant, any other staff person that you're bringing on into your world, you have to craft a vision for them so that they know how and what to execute on. One of the primary duties of a team leader, a CEO of your world, is to be a visionary. And to be a good visionary, you need to protect your time and the time of your staff. Your business plan is the foundational element to bringing on higher leverage in a way that actually contributes to the growth of your business. Without that baseline, your people will kind of flounder. And that's something that both Alivia and I have seen in so many instances. I often tell the teams that we consult with that their business plan really is meant to be their blinders. That is what's going to protect their time, their energy. You know, we are bombarded in real estate with the recommendations and advice and guidance of so many people, so many thought leaders, and it can get really overwhelming trying to figure out what and when to focus on certain things. Your business plan is the answer to that, right? It should be the thing that helps you prioritize the specific things that you want to focus on so that you can do them well and so that your team can do them well. So many of us pour our hearts and souls into our business, but we do it in a way that doesn't really translate into action items for the people we partner with. Or we spend, and I think this happens more frequently, we spend an inordinate amount of time switching gears and trying to execute on the latest trendy, something we will share more about today as Alivia guides us through role-specific KPIs and putting together a really robust, thoughtful business plan in partnership with anybody that you hire onto your team. And I think all of that should kind of intersect. It should be, you know, directionally aligned and kind of feeding off of that business plan that you start with. So I think that just as a note, you know, really when we're talking about those components, when we're talking about finding success, that business plan is foundational. It's fundamental to everything that you layer in afterwards. I want to talk about some numbers. And I had mentioned that we're going to start here with some math, which is, it's very much purposeful. And there are 5 numbers that we're going to start with. I want all of you who are joined with us today to just have these in the back of your mind, maybe even take out some, pen and paper, do it in a little spreadsheet and Google if you need to. But the 5 metrics that I want us to all feel really grounded in are our gross commission income, our cost of sale, as in your commission split that you're paying out to your agents, our operational expenses, our profit goal, and then any ops salary that you're considering, bringing into your world. Or if you already have an ops salary, we can use that specific number as well. And I have been saying that I tell myself in many parts of my life, from growing my business to building wealth, in that it's easiest to scale infinitely when you understand the math. So really it's those 2 things. It's the business plan, a solid business plan like we've talked about, and a deep understanding of your numbers that sets us up for success with our ops teams. For today, I want to keep it really simple and with the financial impact of hiring on a staff member to your team. And I'd love for everyone, again, to try and follow along as in do this math with me. It's not hard math, I promise. And ask questions as we go through this quick exercise to set us up for a more thoughtful and impactful conversation with Alivia on how to guide your staff towards operational excellence. So there's kind of a lot in here, but let me just kind of walk you through at a high level what we're trying to accomplish with this quick calculator. And as you can see, it really does encompass the 5 specific metrics that I asked us to write down. What we're doing here is we want to determine what is your average GCI and company dollar that you're earning on every unit that you close. And so most of us should have like a decent baseline. I mean, you're all real estate professionals, you know your market, you know the average commission rate in your market and what the average home sells for. So our starting point is going to be, what is our average GCI per transaction? And we tried to pick some sample data that kind of across the board, across the country is on par with our averages that we see. And so in this example, we are saying that our average GCI per transaction is $8,500. It's around, a $300,000 home at 2.75%. So it's approximately aligned with kind of some of the averages that we see in certain markets. Now, our average commission split, we try to keep that math really simple in this example, is 50%, meaning that we are paying out to the agents on our team a 50% split and we are retaining the other 50%. Meaning for every transaction that we close, the company dollar that we are netting from those deals is around $4,250. So that's what I want us to just start feeling cemented in, which is how much company dollar, how much operating margin do we have every time one of our agents closes a deal. Those averages are going to impact kind of the rest of our analysis here and help us to figure out how do we break even, how do we see a return on that investment from our ops hires. So I want to just pause there, see, do we have any questions on those two metrics that we're starting with?
I didn't see any, Connor.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. The other three things that we talked about were really expenses. So operational expenses, pretty simple. We need your monthly rate of total expenses that you're paying. I know that's decently variable, right? If you have more listings in a month, your listing specific expenses are going to rise. But on average, I want to figure out what is our operational expense in total for each month. That is the second piece of information that we're going to need. I also want you to have a very firm grasp, a firm concrete number on what profit you're targeting. And I'll just kind of go on a quick tangent here to talk through why we are considering profit and expense. And that is because profit is by design, not by accident. And I want us all to kind of just sit with that statement and resonate with that a little bit. You all are in this business to make money. That's why any of us get into real estate entrepreneurship, right? We want to deliver the dream of home ownership to as many people as possible. And we want to support our families and our wealth building, vision so that we can live an experiential life, so that we can really focus on doing the things, having the freedom, spending the time with the people that we love. And in order to make that a meaningful part of your business plan, we really want to make sure that profit is treated almost like an expense. So I want this to be something that we're planning for intentionally as we build out your plan, meaning that this number is going to be something that we're going to expect to see, that we're going to want to see at the end of each month in terms of what you're paying yourself. And if any of you have kind of studied or heard of the profit first philosophy, this is kind of decently aligned with that. But essentially all we're doing is we're moving that profit number into your operating budget so that you are making it something that we're going to be really focused on as we go throughout the year. And it's not just a nice to have at the end of our monthly check-in on our financial statement. The other thing that we're going to need to know is what is your new salary, or if you already have a salary again for an ops person that you're paying someone per month. Let's account for that here as well. So those three expenses, your total team operating budget, your profit, and then your new salary or any salary that you're looking to add on. Those three metrics are going to be really impactful for us. Okay, how are we on the people that we're bringing into our world? And the easiest way to do that, I think there's a couple different tracks that we could take in terms of the math here, but the simplest way to do that is really to say, okay, our operational expenses are $12,500 per month. Now, if we divide that $12,500 per month by our average company dollar that we're earning, which is $4,250, that means that we need to close 2.9 units a month to break even. To have all of our operational expenses paid, that is the transaction number that we need to accomplish in order for that to be our reality. Now, that's a good baseline, right? That's our quick break-even math, our break-even analysis. The second thing that I want us to think about it again is we all need to be making profit an intentional part of our world. What I want to do then is say, okay, we have our operational expenses, they're 12,500. We have our profit, that's 7,500. If we were earning, spending between paying ourselves and all of our expenses, $20,000, what would that mean in terms of the amount of units that we need to close to cover that number? So that'd be $20,000 divided by that same number, 4,250, equals we need 4.7 units in order to pay for our expenses and pay ourselves. So that becomes another really important metric here. All of this just helpful as we're thinking about our staff. The third and kind of final piece to this initial analysis is to say, all right, we're paying ourselves, we are paying all of our expenses, and now we think we're ready to hire on an additional ops member. What would that new salary be? And you should benchmark this on Glassdoor and make certain that this feels aligned with your specific market. But in this example, we're paying somebody close to 40 grand a year, $3,250 per month. Now, when we're looking at that number, we add that to our $20,000. So basically, this is all of our expenses combined equals $23,250. And in order to achieve that number, we need to close 5.5 units per month. So this just becomes kind of the initial analysis that we can do to see, can I reasonably afford this person? Now, if you are consistently closing, let's call it 4 units per month, and that has been kind of where you've stagnated, then it's going to be kind of a question mark as to whether or not you are ready to bring this person on, right? Because you're just barely hitting that threshold where you're able to pay for your operational expenses and achieve a little bit of profit. Now, if you feel really comfortable, really confident that you've been able to scale your business up to the point where you are consistently able to close 5.5 units or more per month, then that becomes kind of an indication on whether or not you're ready for that ops hire. So a lot of the times we get asked is, am I ready for this ops hire? At what point will I be ready for this ops hire? This quick unit breakdown and break even and profit analysis is a really easy way to figure out whether or not you can kind of incorporate that into your world. So that is one of the things that I would be looking at for those of us who are exploring making a change, bringing on a new person, starting maybe to hire our very first person. I would do this analysis to figure out how many units do we need to cover that individual, and are we even directionally close to that? The other piece that I think would be really important, and then I would love, Alivia, for your thoughts here in terms of when are we ready for an ops person? The other component there is when you have compared the cost of your non-fixed expenses to the cost of bringing somebody in-house, and that math makes sense, that is another indication that you might be ready to bring that person on. And I'll give you an example of that that we see pretty frequently, which is transaction coordination, right? It's very, very frequently talked about in terms of it's really easy as you're growing and scaling to pay somebody a per transaction fee and kind of keep that out of house and pay them, $350 maybe for each transaction that they process for you. That math makes a lot of sense when you're in the earlier part of your growth trajectory. As you start to scale up and as we start to build out operational leverage, as you start to really pour into efficiencies within your business, that cost is going to switch from being something that is advantageous to you to something that could get really, really costly. And we have seen teams who never deviated from that per transaction fee setup who started to close 100 units per year or 200 units per year. And they're very quickly paying people, $150,000 plus when you could really easily bring that in-house and pay a transaction coordinator, depending upon your market, anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 on the very high end. So to me, that is like a really great indicator, a great thing that you should be focused on is where is that cost synergy? Where does that saving make sense? And a lot of the times it's going to be based on that unit count and making certain that you're doing that math, doing that analysis to figure out, does this fixed expense serve me based on how many units I'm doing, or is this something that I should consider bringing in-house? Olivia, anything else that you would think of in terms of what typically is a good leading indicator for, am I ready for an ops hire?
Yeah, I love that example, Connor. And I think that same exact example can be applied to really anything that you're paying outside for. So maybe you are paying a set amount per month or by hour for someone to do like marketing or someone to do listing services or really like any of the operational things on your team. Being able to use that same mindset of what is that cost? And then maybe you've already determined, hey, I'm spending a pretty large amount on this transaction coordination. Maybe it's about like 30,000 a year or something like that. So you're like, okay, well, I'm in the spot right now where I could either continue to pay per file or I could bring a person on. It's about a wash. I don't think probably at that point, that's a full-time job, right? So then you're looking at what else could this person do for me where they're going to be able to leverage other things that I'm already paying an expense for so I can get rid of those expenses and bring into their salary. And then also, as we get further into this conversation, we're going to be talking about specific key performance indicators that your operations hires can have that will contribute to the growth of your business. So that's when you start not only having them leverage things off of you or leverage things that you're paying to outside sources, but then also adding additional pieces to their role that are going to help grow your business and really make an impact for you.
Well said. I'm excited to dive into that. Okay, so that's just our quick breakdown. And I think part one of our analysis, and like I said, I hope y'all have been following along and trying to do some of this, or at least outline some of this structure here, because I think that this is really going to be the telling sign of when and how you might become ready for that operational leverage. The second part of that, though, is, as Alivia kind of put in the chat, this really is just the minimum that we need to achieve, right? Like, and I think we can feel really assured that if we are executing on these targets, then you're in a great spot, right? Like if you are able to bring on that hired leverage, you're able to pay yourself some profit, all of your operational expenses are paid for, you're in a good place, right? Like a lot of people would love to be able to have that profit margin. You should be, as we like to teach people, you should be paying yourself out as a cost of sale as well, so you have a really accurate view of the reality of your business, and you're not conflating your numbers by keeping all of your commissions in your P&L. So I think that that's another important piece of this as well. But really, this 5.5 units needed, if you're hitting that, if you're executing on that, that's a phenomenal place to be. What would be even more phenomenal, however, is if we were able to expand our infrastructure, expand our ability to produce more, and really see a legitimate return on that investment from that ops hire. So the second part of this math is to say, okay, we determined in our first analysis that based on everything that we wanted to pay ourselves and our operational costs and that salary, we need to hit 5.5 units per month in order to make that reality happen. Now, if you're hiring somebody on that is meant to be leverage for you, right? They should be, as Olivia is about to showcase, helping you to operationalize your business and create efficiencies in everything that you're doing. And the whole impact, the whole goal of that, the reason why you want that hired leverage is so that you can continue to expand and grow the business, focusing on high producing, revenue generating activities, right? Like that is the key in terms of why we ever want to hire anybody, is to be legitimate leverage. And with that leverage, we should factor in that, of course, there should be an increase in the amount of units that you could be able to produce as a business. And so, as we said, our benchmark, just our break even for all of those pieces, is 5.5 units. But what do you think is reasonable? What do you think is achievable in terms of how many units you could produce if you had a really high executing operational member of your team helping to support you. And in this example, I said, okay, we think that, in fact, right now we're already at our benchmark. We're hitting around 5, and we think that we could do at least an additional 3 units. Our unit goal on average per month is about 8.5. That difference then becomes those 3 units, right? So this is our baseline. This is what we actually can target, meaning we have 3 additional units that are going to trickle down directly to your profit margin. And that is legitimately, leverage and return on investment in the truest sense of the word. So if we do a little bit of math there, and this should change for everybody based on your own metrics and what you think is achievable, what's realistic. If we do a little bit of math, we would take our unit difference, which in this instance is 3. We would take our average company dollar, which in our previous slides was 4,250. So if we multiply that 4,250 by 3, that's $12,875 in additional profit that you could be generating for your business. Again, all of your operational costs are already factored into that. All of your profit is factored into that. The salary is factored into that. So anything over and above that 5.5 becomes, direct bottom line profit. Now, that's the kicker, right? Is that you could be generating just from that salary of $3,250 an additional $12,000, which, if we do the math on that, is 296% ROI. So that's a 3x ROI. Now that's a really kind of bare bones baseline for us. If you were able to eke out, and Olivia is about to talk us through exactly how you do this, but if you were able to eke out, let's call it 9, 10, 12 units from the 5.5 or 6 that you might have been doing, that could get you anywhere from a 4.5 to 6.5 ROI, which is tremendous. Like I don't know if any of you, are following your returns in the stock market, but that is unheard of, right? So this is legitimately one of the best, most effective, most efficient ways to scale your business, is to really pour in to your ops staff in a thoughtful way, in a way that you feel really confident you can continue to execute on. And I know I touched on in the previous slide that one of the keys here is just making certain that there's consistency in your business, right? This is not us hitting 5.5 units and thinking, okay, we're ready to hire somebody. This is us being able to do that in a consistent way, where we are expecting that, in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months, we will continue on average to be able to hit that target. Now, of course, there's seasonality. Every market's going to have ebbs and flows in the way that your production runs. That's just real estate. And we fully recognize that, but we need to be targeting that average purposefully, because, and in a consistent way, because you don't want to bring on a hire that you won't be able to afford in 2 months, right? Like that's going to be the worst feeling, not only because that's, a human's life that you're responsible for in some way, but also because you're going to be getting so used to all of the operational leverage that person creates for you, that losing them is going to be really impactful to your world as well. So I think that the note there is that even though we're doing all this simple math and, our calculations are telling us one thing, this is a monthly view that should be viewed as kind of an average over a 12-month period. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we're talking about that. Net, I think what's really cool about this is you can see that this tells us specifically how much return on our investment we can stand to make from just one person. And this can scale up, pretty infinitely. If you're thinking about hiring on a couple people, or you already have some of that salary expense built into your existing operational expenses. Let's say you're a 2 million GCI company and some of that's already built out into your infrastructure. You could use this new salary, or what I'm calling a CapEx or capital expenditure line item, to plan for anything that you want to do. Let's say that you want to, move office spaces, or you want to, invest in some really high quality signage. Whatever it might be, you can use that line item to help you figure out, what do I need to do in terms of unit count in order to accommodate all of those things? So I think it's a really nice kind of what if structure for y'all to just be thoughtful around those strategies that you're looking to employ. So with that, I'm just going to pause. Alivia, anything else that you would add in terms of, our numbers here, making sure that we're reaching goals that are attainable, or anything else about the math that we've gone through so
Connor,
far?
can you really briefly explain how you calculated the 296% ROI?
Yes. And I apologize. I actually thought about that as I was explaining it. Yes, the simple math there is that you're going to take your unit count difference times your average company dollar. So that $12,875 metric that we're totaling, which is again kind of like our new profit, or our return, if you will. And you are going to subtract out the $3,250. And then after you have that number, you're going to divide that number by 3,250. And that's going to tell you for this $3,250, what am I actually earning for that investment? So that's the math. It's taking 12,875 minus 3,250 and then dividing that by 3,250. That's going to give you your return, just like you would see in any other investment that you're making, whether that be stocks, whether that be, your home appreciation. That's going to be a legitimate return mathematical function that can help you figure out what is the true benefit of this individual. Thanks for that question.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that question was in the chat, and feel free to keep adding questions to the chat. And Connor, I think that this is awesome. And like you said, the 3 is kind of like, if you're going to bring someone into your business, especially if this is your first operational hire or really any operational hire, thinking of an additional 3 units a month should be pretty standard. And as we get into some of these specific key performance indicators and different things that you can actually have your operations person doing, you'll likely be able to see this 3 number get even higher. And so then all of a sudden, your ROI is not just 3x the salary, maybe it's 4x, 5x, like depending on the person and the things you have them doing, it can be pretty astronomical. And so I think really my biggest takeaway from what you're sharing, Connor, is just that we have to understand where our starting point is and understand what we're looking for. And so then when we bring that person in, we can be really clear on, they're not just here to like get paid a salary and sit in a chair and do some stuff. Like, they're here to make an impact. And this really sets the stage for all of that.
Put that. And I think, just as we're thinking about that 3 or even this 8.5, like the next part of this that Alivia is about to walk into is, how do we actually put a roadmap, put a plan together for that hire to make certain that we are tying their performance to this 8.5, right? Like in any instance where we're bringing on a hire in a real estate business and a real estate team, we should be creating a roadmap for them so that they're actually paying for themselves and then some. That's what we're talking about here today, right? And that's an intentional thing that we're going to work through. It's really about like, what is that business plan for them? What KPIs are we actually going to be grading them on? What are we actually going to be assessing their performance against? And it's going to be a plan that says, hey, you're going to be doing this, this, and this. And the goal is that you're actually going to help us to achieve 10 units per month. Like, that is going to be baked in to the plan that Alivia is about to talk through. So this is an intentional way that we've kind of structured this, is that, yes, we want to understand our baseline. We want to understand our numbers, but then I think equally, perhaps even more important piece is, how do we create a framework for that hire so that we are actually seeing that return? We're seeing that movement in our transaction count each month. So I'm really excited for Alivia to kind of take us through some of that, unless we have any other questions on this.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye out in the chat too, in case any questions get added as well. And I know this was a lot to digest, and it was recorded, So don't worry, you can watch Connor go back
Absolutely.
through that as many
Okay.
times as you want.
So Alivia, I am going to let you share and take it away.
Awesome. And something that I really thought of as you shared that last point, Connor, about with someone so they understand what the expectation is, reminds me of something that one of our co-founders, Ben Kinney, says. He said that when he was having new agents coming on, and he would tell them they would need to save 6 months for their beginning in real estate because it was going to take them 6 months to get a deal. It would take them 6 months to get a deal. But when he told them, I expect you to have something under contract in the first 30 days, they'd have something under contract in the first 30 days. So something that's so powerful about what you said is that people really do rise to the level of our expectations. And if we make it clear that the expectation is that we're getting an additional 3 units a month by bringing on this person, then that's going to happen because they're going to know that that's what's expected of them and they will rise up to that level. So I'm sure you all have kind of heard that before. So I wanted to tie that back in. But that was awesome, Connor. And so now we're really going to jump into the operational pieces specifically. So for those of you on this call that I don't know, which is actually a lot of you, I work with our real estate operations staff across all of our place teams. And so I get to work with a lot of really, really wonderful people that are doing these things at a high level and supporting them with some tools that we're going to go through today on how they can make sure that they're measuring their impacts in their role. So if you all are taking notes, there's a couple things that Connor and I were thinking about when it comes to really getting ROI from your operational staff. Like, what are things that a lot of people are not doing that would make a really, really, really big impact should they do them? So the first one is exactly what Connor just went through, right? Like actually knowing your numbers, understanding your business plan, like getting a picture of where you're at right now, so that you know exactly what you need your new person to do. So that's step number 1. So there's 5 total. I'll tell you there's 5. That's number 1. So number 2 is really viewing our operations staff as not just leverage or an assistant, but as a true impact partnership with measurable performance indicators. So we're going to get into that in just a second, spend a lot of time there. The third thing is holding accountability to reporting on those KPIs and providing consistent clarity on what the top priorities are. Ops is not a set it and forget it system. We're going to get into that more too, but providing that consistent clarity so you're always on the same page. And then the fourth is putting pressure on the systems and becoming clear about dollar per hour activities. A lot of people do not do this. They'll have, if let's say they maybe have one staff member, that staff member is going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. Ashley, I just can't do this job anymore. It's too much. And then they'll be like, okay, great, let's bring on another one. And that's really not the right answer, right? Like you have to put pressure on the systems, put pressure on, is all of this work that's being done the highest use of your dollar per hour? And that leads right into the fifth one, which is probably, I mean, I guess the second one's probably my favorite, but this is my second favorite, which is creating a culture of efficiency by expecting staff to always be on the lookout for things that can be automated, eliminated, or delegated. Those of you on this call that work with me a lot, you know that I say that all the time. I'm like a broken record on that, but it's one of my favorite things. So we're going to jump into all of those right now. So the first one is really viewing your operations leader as a true impact partnership. So that means that it's not just leverage, right? Like in our industry, we use the term leverage alongside operations, staff, admin all the time. And it's absolutely correct. They should be leverage for you in your business, but they should also be impact. And I think that's where we don't hear that quite as much. And it's just so important that you're getting the full value of your operations people, not just through them taking things off of your plate. And so success, like we said earlier, it's not just simply sitting in the chair, coming into the office, being there for you, checking off tasks, getting to inbox zero, all of those things. Those are great. Those are leverage, but they're not impact. And so it's really important to focus on those measurable pieces that will move you forward so that your ops is actually pushing your business forward instead of just keeping you at the same level that you are, which does not provide return on investment. As we just saw from Connor, if you have someone doing that stuff, it'll probably just keep you at that 5.5, which is still good. There's nothing wrong with that, but we're all here because we want to get to our maximum ROI, which is not that 5.5. So we find that operations can impact performance of the business with three main levers. And these levers are directly related to your business plan. So that's why we talked about that piece first, is understanding like, what are the main pieces you want to focus on to grow your business in this coming year? I mean, we're in August now, so maybe you're thinking about next year, or maybe you're thinking about your final quarter. So those three main levers are per agent productivity, which can be done by ops by either activating your database or activating your agents, or both. Net agent gain, which is recruiting and retention, and then expense reduction. So those are the three main areas that we find operations can really impact the business. And so when you're sort of going through those expectations, building out key performance indicators, and I'm going to show an example in just a second, with your operations staff, you want to make sure that you're not just focusing on the expected activities, but rather the results that are expected from those activities. So a really great example of that is client events. I know a lot of people in real estate run client events, probably everyone does. And so is your expectation from your client event to go to that event, set up at your pumpkin patch or your tree farm or whatever, wherever that event is, and just like sit there and wait for the people to come, give them their stuff, put on a show, make them feel awesome, have some great connections? Or is it X% of the database is called and invited to this? Or is it X% of referrals are obtained from conversations with your clients in your sphere that are attending this event? Really taking a look at it in terms of those numbers and not just like actually just doing the activity, right? And so that's how you determine how to get those additional 3 units or more than 3 per month, is stopping and thinking directly related to your business plan. What are the things on there that your operations person can do related to, ideally, maybe those 3 levers that I just talked about? Or if there's another lever in your business that you think would be really valuable, that's great too. All that matters is that it's something that can be measured. And that's the most important piece here. And because that allows you to have operations staff that clearly know if they're winning or if they're needing improvement in their roles, just like how you would coach your agents. So I am going to share with you, this is a little snip of something we created for operations within Place. It's called our operations key performance indicators. And the idea here was to have some very specific things that our operations people could use to know if they were on the right track for their role and making an impact. Something to note here is that this does not mean the key performance indicators are the entire job. There's a lot of other things that still need to happen in order to provide the accurate leverage for your business. But these are the things that they should be focusing on when they're time blocking, when they're doing things to really drive the business forward. So I'll show this example. And this example is specifically related around per agent productivity. So in this tool that we shared with all of our Place partners, there's the 3 different levers, and we ask our operations people to choose one KPI per lever. Or if the biggest thing in their business right now is increasing per agent productivity, they can have all their KPIs related to per agent productivity. That's okay. So this one specifically is around the loyalty gap. If you have heard our president, Chris Stewart, he talks about that a lot, which is the idea of bringing more of our clients who have transacted with us in the past to transact with us again in the future, instead of going to work with someone else when that time comes. And as we know from the NAR stats, it's actually like pretty crazy, the number of people that are like, oh yeah, I'd work with you again. And then the number of people that actually don't work with you again. So that's why we have a big focus on this one. So you can see here that we've got our example there of close the loyalty gap by 5% by increasing activities and increasing the client experience. So this operations person, whose KPI this is expected to make 10 contacts a week with clients in past status. They're expected to obtain 1 referral per month from a client in past status. That's directly related from those phone calls. But again, saying that the measurable is not just the 10 phone calls, it's the 1 referral per month. So that's actually making that person ask for the referral versus just getting on the phone and talking about whatever, right? We have a focus on the Promise script by Mike Hicks out of Idaho Falls here in our Place network. And so we have some auto plans we've created that we want to make sure those are running on all buyer and seller pendings and inspecting them weekly to make sure that those are firing correctly so that we're actually getting that Promise script referral information out to our clients in an automated and efficient way. Having conversations with agents each day to lead to 90% attendance at morning power-ups. We have found through research in our company that actually bringing the agents in office increases the amount of activities that they're doing in the database, like number of dials made, conversations had, appointments set. And so that's why that's one of the KPIs here is to increase those activities to try to get our agents doing more to bring in more business. And then also, this is what we talked about earlier, running 4 events throughout the year using the full operations and agent playbook, which is referring directly to something that we created for our Place partners, with 80% of the database called for every single event. So again, the focus is not just on booking the food truck, booking the spot, getting the t-shirts, whatever the things are, but actually like, has 80% of the database been called? Is someone inspecting that? And having those things really clearly focused on as the ultimate measure of success, not just planning the event. And so Connor, while I've been sharing, I have not been seeing if there's any questions in the chat. So is there anything I should answer?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, cool. So hopefully this helps you all see how you can really like drive down some specific measurables. And again, like I could talk about this for hours, right? So this is one specific KPI, but you can probably see how this would translate into some other areas in your business where you can help provide that roadmap of exactly how to achieve those additional units. So I will stop sharing for a second here. And we're going to talk about the third item on that list, which is holding accountability to reporting on the KPIs and providing consistent clarity on what the top priority is. Connor, you brought up one of my favorite things that's just so important to bring awareness to constantly about how in the real estate industry, we are like constantly bombarded with a billion different new ideas, new things, new tools, new scripts, new everything that we could try. And if you're not laser focused on your plan, it is so easy to just be like, okay, yeah, that's my new solution. I'm going to work on that for a bit. And now, oh, actually, no, now this other one is the new solution. We're going to focus there. And what happens when you're focusing on all these different things is you're actually focusing on nothing, which means that nothing will actually get done and you won't see that impact. And so that's why this one is so incredibly important. And a lot of people, like they'll bring on an operations person, maybe even set up these key performance indicators, which if you're doing that, like high five, job well done, because a lot of people are not. But the piece that a lot of people don't do is have that consistent, ideally weekly meeting with the operations people on their team to provide that clarity on the priorities and accountability for reporting on those numbers. If you just bring on an ops person and you give them the stuff to get started and just kind of like set it and forget it, you are not earning the right to get the impact leverage that we're talking about here. And Chris Suarez, one of our co-founders, he talks a lot about how when you reach new levels of your business, it does not mean that you lose the problems that you've been having, right? Like you just earn the right to solve new problems because once you bring on leverage, you now have different problems to solve. And I wanted to use this metaphor. Last year, I got a couple of foot surgeries. And during the time I couldn't walk, all I could think about was, I want to walk, right? Like that was my biggest problem was like, I can't walk, right? But then once I was able to walk, now I have to do PT for 20 minutes a day to earn the right to continue to be able to walk, or else it's just not going to happen for me. And it's the same with your ops. Like once you hire them on, you have to continuously invest in that relationship, in those conversations so that you can earn the right to get this impact of these additional 3+ units per month that Connor's talking about. So I hope that really makes sense to all of you of the importance of that. It is your duty as the leader to train the person on how you want things done and then consistently providing that clarity on what the top priorities are. A big piece of that is simplification. Like we talked about, there's so many options, right? So like What are the most important ones? And they should be directly tied to your business plan. And then, like, if you think you as a team owner or as an agent, if you have a lot of things being thrown at you, like, my goodness, ops has like all of these crazy Facebook groups. Like, there's just constantly new stuff, new ideas, new webinars you can attend. You could be on webinars all day, every day, if you wanted to be. So it's just so important that you're focusing with your people on where they should be spending their time. So the next thing that I'm going to show is an example of this reporting. So let me share my screen again. Oh. All right, here we go. So this is like a fairly simple example of a way that we teach reporting on results. So basically, this is a part of a much larger tool that we provide for our operations leaders, where they're getting clarity on their priorities on a weekly basis. But these ongoing priorities, you'll find the top ones relate directly to that KPI sheet that we just went through. So for example, make 10 contacts a week with clients in past status. They made 11 that past week in this example. Nice job. Like, they hit that lead measure. However, the lag measure, obtain 1 referral per month from a client in past status, there's no referrals yet. So maybe this is the first week of the month and they're, maybe they haven't gotten any yet. But if this is the last week of the month, we have an issue, because it doesn't matter how many contacts they're making if they're not getting that referral, because that referral is what's going to lead to those increased units. So I just wanted to show this as an example of why it's so important to have this accountability around the numbers. And as you can see with all of these different things on here, this one shows some different KPIs that are part of our larger example around like actually posting about recruiting and like having contacts for recruits and spending time reviewing expenses, a part of a much larger KPI system. But you can see that every single thing here is measured so that the person that's having the accountability session with this operations person is able to say, hey, do we need to work on scripts maybe for these referrals? Or maybe we need more contacts to get to this level, like really diagnosing what the issue is so that you can ensure that you're getting the results that you need from that person to achieve that ROI. So I'll stop sharing there. So that is our third thing. And our fourth thing is putting pressure on the systems and the dollar per hour. So we talk all the time about not hiring a person to solve a systems problem. Really looking at like, once you get to that point where you're feeling like, oh my gosh, April, like I cannot do any more. That's when you have to stop and look at like, okay, what are all the things that you're doing right now? Ensuring that all of the staff that you have or staff that you'll have in the future understand the value that they bring and what their ROI is worth, right? Like, are there things that they can leverage? Do you have any virtual assistants? If you don't, getting over that limiting belief that a virtual assistant can't be supportive to you in the business, or getting over that limiting belief that this email won't sound as good to the client if it's automated. Well, maybe it will. Maybe they'll never notice, right? And so really putting pressure on those systems to see what things can you do with a lower dollar power, or can you do with automation, and really challenging your staff to see like how much can you do with your time through auditing their time, auditing their processes, and sometimes gamifying things can help, right? Like getting them really bought in on like, how can we do as much as we possibly can do before we bring on another person? Like, let's really see what our limit is if we really pushed ourselves. And there's the like cheesy saying of pressure makes diamonds, but like, honestly, I have been in this business, I'm working on my 5th year now. And every time where I have felt like I'm at my breaking point where I'm like, I literally cannot do another thing. And, it gets really stressful. It's a hard time. But that's always where I come up with my best ideas for how I can be a lot more efficient in my systems in the future. And so you just don't get to that level of efficiency without that level of pressure. And it's fun once you start realizing, like, now I've gotten to the point where when I feel that way, I get excited because I'm like, what's going to come out of this one? Like, what next breakthrough am I going to have that I haven't had before? And so then our final step is creating the culture of ownership and efficiency. Martin Moore says, don't do things excellently that shouldn't be done at all. Again, this is another one where if you're in our world, you have heard me say that like a broken record, because it is just such an important piece to think about. Like, yeah, you might be really good at doing all of those designs on Canva. It might be so fun for you, but like, if that's not a good use of your time, it does not matter if you do it excellently, because you shouldn't be doing it at all. And that's just such an important thing to really stop and think about. And really reward people that work with you for bringing to light things that they've noticed that can be automated, eliminated, or delegated. Because sometimes there's like a fear piece where you're like, oh gosh, if I bring up like this thing I've been doing that takes 5 hours of my week and it can probably be automated, like, am I still going to have my job? That's kind of like more normal in a typical corporate structure, but that is not what happens here. You should really reward your people if they bring up stuff like that and say, hey, you just saved yourself 5 hours a week. Like, what can we put in that time block that's really going to drive the business forward, and reward that so that over time you start seeing it happen more and more. Modi, I see your hand is up and it hasn't gone away. So I'm thinking it might not be a mistake like the other ones. I don't know how to bring you up here though. Oh, you said no. Okay. Sorry, if you, I don't know if we know how to like actually pull people out, but if you have questions, like, please just put them in the chat and we'll make sure to answer them for you. And so the last thing I wanted to share is like, when the market is good, like in the past few years, we've had a pretty hot market, right? Like, I'm sure you have all been feeling that. You've been maybe having some pretty good years, maybe better years than you've ever had. Maybe you joined into real estate because you saw how good of years everyone else was having. And it's really, really, really easy to slip into bad habits during that time. You're like, hey, profit's looking awesome. I'm going to bring on another staff person. But now that things are kind of like leveling back out, it's not the same. And like Connor was saying, like, that's a person's life, right? Like, it's not, they're not just like numbers. Like, that's a person you brought into your business, and you have to make sure that you can afford that person. And so really making sure that before you just bring on another person, you're really considering, like, is this the best move? And when your people are trying new things, like, don't punish if they fail. Don't be upset if they fail. Like, sometimes trying and just taking action creates things that go wrong or things that are messy, but it's all about just moving forward. And if you've never used something like these KPIs before, people are going to fail and they're going to be challenged, and it will be messy, but I can definitely promise you that on the other side of that, it's going to be results, right? It's going to be 3 extra units a year. It's going to be 5. It's going to be 10. It really can be anything if you push on these 5 things that Connor and I have gone through today. Connor, what would you add?
Well, there was a couple things that I was thinking about, Olivia, as you were talking. And the first one is that I love your saying, you were the first person I heard it from, about don't do things excellently that shouldn't be done at all.
And well, Martin Moore's saying, I don't want to get sued.
you were the one who shared, though. I think that one of the ways to protect against that is, it's my turn to sound like a broken record, is your business plan, right? Like if you have that structure, they know what they should be focused on. You have put together a really thoughtful, really purposeful vision that you've crafted together, and that is where their time and energy should be spent. So it becomes almost a moot point when they want to focus on something else, because that's not part of the world that you have created for them. That's not part of the priority that you've established in the business. I think the other thing that I was thinking about, as you were kind of talking about, one of the things that kind of the common missteps that we see is that people don't really come back and hold your ops leaders accountable to the things that you set up in the beginning. I want to draw out a very clear distinction here, in that Alivia said that, just because we create a business plan or because we create KPIs for an individual and help put them on a path towards success, that doesn't mean that it is set it and forget it. it is the blending of both of those things and having that plan, but also being consistent and talking about it frequently, that really is what drives your results. So I think it's easy once you have, like, yes, we keep talking about your business plan. It's easy once you have that to be like, all right, they know exactly what they should be doing, but that's not at all the intention, right? That is to be a tool, a living, breathing document that you continue to reference back to because of the impact that you're going to be able to have from it. It also, as a leader, and I'll just call this out, considering we work with lots of real estate team leaders as well, I know that a lot of y'all like to also focus on multiple things at once and get a little squirrely when we hear guidance from people that we trust and respect and want to focus on those things. And sometimes it's even our ops leaders who are like, hey, what's going on, man? Like, what's going on, gal? Like, you told me to focus in this one area and now you're pulling me in 8 different directions. Like, that business plan is as much of an accountability mechanism as it is for them as it is for you. So I think just remember that it's good to do for more reasons than just, having it documented. It really is about creating that culture, that consistency that you need in order to maximize that leverage.
Awesome. Thanks for wrapping that up, Connor. And thank you everyone so much for coming and joining us and spending this hour with us. I think if you implement, even just a couple of the steps that we went through today of those 5, that you'll definitely see increase in ROI, as well as long-term retention of the people that are working in operations in your business, because it feels good to win, right? That's what keeps people. So thank you so much. And this recording will be posted on the YouTube channel, so you can watch it back as many times as you want. But thank you all so much for spending your time here today with us. This was fun.
Yes, thank you for letting us share. Appreciate you being here.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.